Let's try this computer this time. Okay, you may see a message on your screen that says, she is recording. Do you still want to be here? And you can decide. Okay, so I'll show you, let me spotlight this one. And I'll show you my honey jar.
That's so good.
Thank you. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. But let me tell you a couple of things that surprised me. First, well, the main thing that surprised me, I think I decided to darken this because it was really light after it dried. And then look at these watermarks I got here, which at first, that's the cauliflower thing that a lot of like traditional watercolorists don't like. But I think sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I'm happy to me, watercolor is all about the brushes and the water. So I'm happy to let it do what it wants to do. But I also realized, because it's behind this fluffy flower, I thought, I don't know, I think I might even kind of like it there. So
yeah,
I didn't paint over it or anything. I just let it be. But the only other thing I kind of did, which Pamela is what you just need to do next, is I just added a little more dark.
Yeah.
Added a little more dark down here, in away from the shadow. I decided not to darken this again because I kind of liked how it was. It kind of looks like the light is hitting the shadow, which also happens, with our chiaroscuro, our objects sometimes will hit our shadow and reflect back and forth. So that's fine. But the main thing I wanted to show you was I went in some of these places, like to do some of the lines of the orange and stuff, to do something needed to happen here to give it some dimension. I think I probably should have done that flatter. But I use pen. At that stage, it's just really, to me, it seems really tedious. Well, I shouldn't say it seems tedious. It's to me, watercolor is not the best medium when I'm just trying to add some lines, And so I think it's nice to just go over it again. And when you have kind of smooth paper or your sketchbook paper, it's really easy to do that. It's harder with like the paper that Mason's using right now. It's cold pressed. And so ink doesn't really work on it because it kind of catches. But on this kind of paper, on our sketchbook paper, we can totally go over it with ink. And I'm going to do this with the bird too, rather than mix all these colors, I just thought, well, I'm just going to use some white ink and then some black ink. But then that looked really weird that I had this ink there and it was nowhere else. So then to balance my picture, I just added some black ink some other places, just to kind of balance it out and bring some continuity. So this is a $500 trick. If you put something down like a color or a line and you don't like it, just put it a couple more places and it will balance out. I swear to God, it's so weird. Like you can fight with it. Because at first I was like, ooh, I do not like these black lines of this orange. But then when I just went and put some black lines other places, then it was like, now you can't really tell, And I think most artists would probably look at their piece of work and they would show you something that they don't like about it or something that was unexpected, but the viewer would never know. So anyway, so that's, when I first heard that tip, I was like aghast, because I'm just fighting with it to try to cover it and throw it away and start over. And my teacher, Amy, was like, no, just do it a couple more places, an odd number, and then put that green thing away. And for some reason, it will balance out. So, and it's just, to me, that's the stage of the painting. Well, I think all of the stages are fun, but now I did not always find that to be the case, but now I find all the stages to be fun. But what I really enjoy is when I have this down enough that my photo reference goes out the window and I'm just kind of checking out what this needs. Like I put some white gouache here to get this highlight back. I didn't like how I had painted over what would be a very severe highlight given where my light source is. So, taking a black pen and then some white and just making those lights and darks again, I just felt like kind of finished up the project. And like I said, there's things, Mason did a beautiful job keeping this open. I painted the whole thing so it looks like it's stuffed with honey. That doesn't look very natural, And then this oval, this ellipse here, I think should, now that I look at it, I think it should have been flatter or something. There's some about that line that I don't really like, but I had to put something there. It just wasn't looking right. So anyway, there's things I like, things I don't like, but all in all, a good exercise. Yeah. And then I also want to show you a couple other things. It was my birthday on Monday. And my friend works at Bima, and check out this card. Oh my gosh. I want to copy this. I mean, Mason, I can tell by your reaction, what's really fun is when you know enough to know like kind of how they did it. And then you kind of want to try it, because this is obviously a beautiful background. And then she painted this bird on top. And I was trying to decide, did she mask it? Did she not mask it? I think she might have just painted right over the background, maybe like kind of lifted it a little bit. And then she probably used some masking fluid over the background to keep some of these marks. And then of course the composition of the bird is stunning, but all of these darks, she just painted this right over the background. That's the beauty of watercolors. As long as we layer in the right direction, we can do all kinds of things. We don't need to mask out these legs because they're going to be darker than the background anyway. We'll just paint them over afterwards. Yeah. So that's super cool. And then the last but not least, let me show you. I think I've talked to you guys before about cards, because cards are such, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I was learning, well, I'm still learning, but sometimes I just feel like I want this to be for something, some reason that I'm doing this. I don't know why. I must be like a very existential person or something, because I'm constantly like, what am I here about? What is this all about? What is this for? Why am I spending my time doing this? My mind just like totally derails me sometimes, instead of just like, hey, Chica, you're having fun. Like, what's the problem? It's like, no, that is not good enough. So I really enjoy cards because it gives us a good occasion to practice our skills and then send it to somebody. So, in fact, I know I've talked to you about cards because I teased Lisbeth about her palm tree carrot and how her mother would love it. But she's my friend, so I'm allowed to say that to her. So I've been playing around with these two colors, Potter's Pink, and I think this is a Cobalt Turquoise Light, that I really haven't used that much, but I read about online and somebody said they love them together. And then I realized, they make like super cool grays and stuff. And then I have this gold color. And so I've just been having a lot of fun with this was a silver one, but I didn't like that as much. I like the gold much better. I was putting down masking fluid to save my whites, and then I'm just really like playing around with this geometric abstraction and just kind of having a ball, actually. And I don't know if these are going anywhere, if I like them or if I don't like them, but I'm having fun. So that's the main thing. And then I'll send them to people, and yeah, it's just, and again, it's like, this paint is really granulating. This Potter's Pink, I don't think you can tell on the video, but it granulates, it breaks down into these little pieces, or it falls into the texture of the paper. And I want to show you, I have two different cards, and I'm going to bring some to class next week to share the Swarthmore paper with you, because it's less expensive. But I don't like, to me, I realized that I don't like paper where the texture is too consistent. I like it to be a little more random. And so I started buying these Arteza cards. And these are actually better watercolor paper, and the texture of the card is very random, which is especially great for this type of painting because of the granulation and the way it sits in the paper. It's really nice that it doesn't look like it was all just printed off of the same block. So anyway, I can't, if you're interested in just exploring your skills, I cannot tell you how much people enjoy receiving a hand painted card in the mail. Like it is just unbelievable. I would send them to some friends and I could just tell when I saw them next that our relationship had deepened. I can't really explain it, you know, like I just sent a hand painted card and I said something nice and something, you know, it wasn't like we spent 8 hours together, but something about that exchange deepened friendships. And it was just it's just a lovely exercise. And as a painting teacher, I get all sorts of amazing mail. You just wouldn't believe it. So if you ever have a card that you hate, just send it to me. I'll love it, I promise. All right then. So how did we go about putting our birds on a page? Did that go okay for people?
Sort of.
I didn't get
Ooh.
a chance to do it, so
All right.
so I'm starting from fresh here.
All right.
I was doing
Then-
mine while you were talking.
All right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all about how fast you can do it, right? So if you can do it fast, then you can do it while I'm yakking at you about my little projects. And oh, actually, let me yak at you about one other little project. And I'm just, you know, I don't mean to bore you. Because I'm new at this too, I just want to share with you how I'm incorporating it into my life. And then maybe you'll think, oh, wait, maybe I'll do some cards or, you know, and so, because I just want you to do more of it, because everyone here on the screen and everyone listening obviously loves doing this. And so then the question is, are we going to make more time for it? You know, are we going to fit this into our days? And so I like to share different ideas that I'm kind of into so that you can just try to fit it into your day in different ways. But I've been trying to do some lilacs and just not having success with how I was putting them down and the shape of them and where my shadows were and stuff. And I was trying to do them loosely. And so I ended up, and this isn't really going to show on this video, but I ended up going out into the yard and just kind of like blind contour marking. I don't even know what I was doing. I was just looking at the lilac bush and like trying to see the growth pattern and where the leaves were and how they were overlapping. And they're triangular, but they're not triangular. And it was just really, it was so fun. You know, it was like a sunny afternoon and I sat in the grass and I looked at the lilac tree. And one of the things I realized as I was looking at it was what was failing me in painting it was how it grows on the tree. Because I was looking at photos of it, which are like, of course, they're like upright, you know, it's all, but that's not how they grow on the tree. They actually kind of like lop over. And something about seeing how it was actually growing, I don't know, I can't explain it. I'm gonna try the cards again, but I think you know, just the way nature does its thing is so cool, that there was something about seeing how it was growing on that bush that I felt like, oh, I understand it in a different way than I was before. Yeah. So that's cool. All right. So I'm going to make these all robins because I've been looking at a lot of robins in the yard. And I can't show you, I have to be a little careful about what photo references I show you because this is a paid class. And so I don't want to be showing you references that are copyrighted. So I'm just going to paint these along the lines of the birds that I've been looking at because they're in my yard and eating worms and, you know, doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I don't know, have you guys painted birds before or drawn birds before?
I haven't.
No,
All right.
A little.
Yeah.
All right.
I
So
love birds.
I know birds are so amazing. And as with lots of things, once you start drawing them and painting them, like you just love them even more. And you start observing them and noticing more about them. But here's one thing that's really going to guide our drawing today is, oh my gosh, I've totally forgotten the name of it. Okay, I'm going to show you what, I'm going to draw what it is, and then somebody tell me what I'm talking about here. It has like a midline, okay?
Mm,
And the midline is not in the same place with all the birds.
right.
Like this one's midline is way up here.
It's kind of perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like perspective in birds, exactly.
Well,
Because
it's balance.
right, exactly. Because it's, I mean, the way that it translates in birds is how the feathers grow. Okay. Because for like this guy, you know, his feathers, they're kind of, well, let me just show you with a brush. Actually, I'm not going to show you with a brush because I want to kind of mix color. But the feathers are kind of going to go like this, the color pattern, right? But up here, obviously, it's not really going to do that. It's almost half and half because I'm already looking at it from the side. And the same with the head, but the head, you know, can go in all sorts of different ways. So this one, his body's midline is this way, but his head's midline is this way. And so I wanted to, frankly, you know, for some of us, it would take the whole 2 hours just to draw these 5 birds. So I wanted to give you the cheat sheet, and then we can just kind of focus on the painting part. But this is the piece that I want you to think about is, where is the midline of the head and the body? Because that's going to dictate our feather patterns. All right. All right. We have a cute kitty. He must have heard that we were painting birds.
We have a
All right, let
nest
me-
in one of our eaves, and she is listening to this Scrabble of birds in the eaves, and it's driving her
I'm
nuts.
being tortured.
Yep,
Yeah. Why can't I get out there and be a serial killer, Mom?
right, exactly.
Anne Marie, I took up some photographs off of the internet, and you can
Yes.
clearly see that midline on this one bird, on this
Let
cardinal.
me hang on. Let me spotlight you.
Okay,
All right.
okay. If
And
you look
now
at
I
the
gotta go
cardinal
speaker.
right there.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Look
Very
at
nice.
that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Look at that shadow.
Oh,
Oh, and the white one too. You can see it.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
these
great.
are some paintings somebody did of different birds too.
Oh my gosh, those are beautiful.
They
Yeah.
are,
So,
yeah.
Those are so beautiful.
but thank you for telling about the midline. That's great.
Yeah, that's the most important tip for birds, because otherwise, you know, we'll mess up our flight pattern, our feather pattern. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna mix some color, and I'll just tell you right now that I'm not the best at mixing color. I kind of know what to do. I get a little impatient. And I'm also not looking at a photo reference right now. So, you know, I'm just kind of going to guess a little bit. But I know for starter, and I also have to say, I'm also happy to paint a turquoise bird, right? Like if I feel like looking at turquoise, then this bird is going to be turquoise. Sorry. But for purposes of today, so you paint your birds however you want. And if you prefer, again, if you would like to simplify the exercise, then please just use one color. Just use a color like purple or dark turquoise. Use a color where you can achieve darker values, or add, you know, a neutral tint or something like that. But if you would like to, and I do recommend that in the sense that if you're studying the paint, we're going to talk a bit about paint stroke, about leading whites. So there's kind of going to be a lot going on. And so sometimes just simplifying color choices can just make things a lot easier. So I'll leave that decision up to you. But I will be mixing up I'm using some red, but I'm also going to add a little, this is a quinacridone burnt orange. Oh, you know what? I got to get a little cheat sheet here. This is one thing I've recently started doing. I resisted this for the longest time, but it is a good idea to test your colors. It looks a little different. And, you know, then we can see the tone of them, the color of them. I like that orange, but it's a little bright for what I'm noticing on the bellies of these robins. So I'm going to knock it back with a little bit of blue. Opposite color on the color wheel, but this blue is super strong, so I'm just going to use a tiny bit. And actually I'm going to mix up a little bit more of this. And maybe I'll keep some bright and then just have this blue over here so I can kind of dip into it and make more of a neutral color. Or actually, I could kind of move over here. There we go. I'll use this little well. There we go. And that actually does look like kind of a more realistic version of the color that I'm noticing. Yeah, that should work well. So I certainly do not have enough paint here to paint all of these birds. And I think I would like to have enough paint to paint all of the birds because then it just goes faster. So that means I've got to mix up a lot more of that. But in the meantime, why don't I mix the other colors I need? Because if I have all my colors ready, then I can move faster and let them bleed together, which I think just looks really nice. So I never start painting unless I have at least 2 colors, sometimes 3 colors already mixed. And if you're sticking with one color, then you would just want different values, a really light, a medium, and a dark. But I really want these, you know, I want to see that effect of the bleeding. And then like we were talking about with Pamela, I can always bring it back in with line work. But I want to see some bleeding as I start my painting. Actually, you know what I'm going to do first? Oh, this is a good thing to talk about. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the beak. Okay. Why am I painting the beak first?
Because it's the lightest.
Yes. Bing, 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 bing. Excellent. Yeah, and using yellow, like when you paint on location, it's often good to start with the yellows because then your water is, you use yellow when your water is clean and then you move on to your other colors. So I am going to, okay, I have one more disclaimer. I don't have photo references, okay? I drew this so long ago, I don't even know where these pictures came from. So I can't get photo references even if I want to. So I'll be honest, these are not probably gonna be the best birds. Even though I've looked at a lot of birds and I've painted a lot of birds, I'm probably not gonna remember exactly these birds in this stance, how this needs to go. So that's okay. We'll just, and I already don't like the shape of this beak and I want to leave a little bit of white. So I'm going to paint there. Let's leave his beak white on the top. Do a little bit of white there. There. Oh, and this guy, this is so good.
And I'm sorry, did
That's
you wet your birds or your beaks, or are you just dry right now?
I'm sorry, I'm just dry.
Oh, okay.
I'm just putting on that little bit of yellow, dry, wet on dry, wet brush, dry paper, and that's it.
Gotcha.
And actually, you know, the beaks are something that I don't really want to run. So that's one of the reasons I did that first, because the beak and the eye, that's kind of important. I don't know. It just seems like we can just leave that the way it is. Okay. So then the next thing I want to do is, I've got some red here. I can also use this yellow to add a little like sunshine and stuff. I'm just going to mix a little bit more of this chest color. Maybe I'll darken that with a little bit of brown. There we go. When you're using a sable brush and mixing color, a lot of it stays in the belly of your brush. So sometimes I like to kind of, it seems silly to waste all that paint, so you can kind of scrape it off in your palette and get it out of the belly. All right, and then I'm gonna do more of a brown color, like a darker brown. And I'll use this blue kind of stuff I have going on over here. Actually, I'm gonna need a little bit more of this blue. Not very much. The phthalo blue is intense. And now you can see that I have a warm cup and a cool cup, and I try to keep my colors kind of clean that way. Okay, and then let's test out this brown. I feel like I might want, it's pretty light. Let's get a lot more paint here. So now my colors are getting a little sticky. They're a little harder to work with, so I'm just gonna spritz them again. That's why I like spritz bottles, because I just constantly do that. Let it activate. Now I need my little cheat sheet because I can't actually tell what I got going on down here. Indigo. Ooh, maybe we'll try a little indigo. Ooh, that's really dark. Make that a little more brown. Squeeze that out. Okay, I think I'm ready to begin. All right, I have kind of a big brush here. I like using a brush that's too big because it helps me stay loose. I can't really pay too much attention to the lines when my brush is already too big. But I do like a brush that will hold a good point, which is like why I like these sable brushes. But I'm down with a nice big brush, especially to start, because this is my base layer. And yeah, so I'm gonna do the belly first of this guy. And what I want to do is kind of think about, it'd be nice as I wanted to, this is sort of a planned page a little bit, and Teresa, I think you did a beautiful job with your poppies that way, leaving the white over here. The composition is just very interesting and pleasing. And it's great to get to this stage where we can kind of, I've just started in the last year thinking about my page, which is why I mentioned that I don't really like how these guys are kind of jammed up down here. But the way I can balance that out is I can write something. So I have something that's taking up more space over here to kind of balance it out. Like I could write, art class, May 19th, and then that's at least a little, I can add a little box there that brings some symmetry to my page. So I do want to think about the light source. And I think I've kind of decided it's coming from the top by the way that I've chosen to do these highlights. So then I'm thinking about, well, this guy, his belly is kind of coming out. So maybe there would be some light over here. And then I'm actually going to turn my brush this way and just kind of dab at him a little. Now I don't need to rinse my brush while I'm going into my brown. I can just pick up the brown, and then I'm not adding problems with water, like having too much water and diluting my paint. And then over here, I might want to kind of like, he has like feathers, maybe he's, And then of course it would be a little darker under there. Now, one thing that I would like to do is I would like to, I put these strokes down and they just look, they don't look random at all. They just look very like blop, 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 blop. So what I can do is clean off my brush, kind of get my point back. And then I can actually, like, my teacher, Jean Haynes, talks about kind of like you're stroking the animal. And I feel like that looks like too much. Now it kind of looks like a zipper. So maybe I'll kind of flatten out some of it. And we'll just have a little bit. And then maybe come in, oops, that's a wrong red. I want to be a little consistent with my, I don't necessarily want to add another red at this stage. So now I'm just dropping in more wet paint. I'm doing it kind of wet in wet on the paint that I already have. And then he needs a head. Well, he has a head, but it needs some color. Now, I feel like in watercolor, I like to be, and actually I can go over the eye because I can add white later. I like to be a kind of severe about my whites in watercolor, especially in my sketchbook, because I just know that that adds a lot of, it adds a lot of interest. So anywhere that there's, when I was first starting, when there was light, I would try to like, oh, let's make that a light brown. But now I just want it to be white. Instead of light brown, I'm just going to let that whole head be light and just kind of soften that a little. And now I'm just kind of taking a wet brush and softening these lines so that I can add a little more consistency. Now I'm going to darken that eye a little bit.
And I'm sorry, what colors did you mix your darker color on the bird with?
That is burnt raw umber, phthalo blue red shade,
Mm-hmm.
and it had some of this red in it. And I'm using an alizarin crimson, a cool red.
Okay.
Okay, and then I know that this bird is not really white down here, so I'm gonna actually make kind of a gray with these colors I'm already using. So at this point, I'm not really gonna introduce new colors. I kind of have the colors I need, and I'll just keep it simple. But I do want a little bit of gray because, as we know, there would be a shadow under his belly here. And this is kind of cool because I'm getting some beading. My red is beading a little bit. So I can actually kind of like touch in here and then let that run a little bit, which is kind of fun. Or maybe it won't be fun. Maybe I won't like it at all. I don't know. Let's just try. So you see that my red is running a lot into the, into there. And I think, you know, that might be an opportunity for panic. Oh, I don't want, see, this is where I get like, I'm so possessive of my whites. This is where I want to pick up a paper towel when I've accidentally painted on the top of his head, which should be a highlight. Otherwise, I just feel like, the paint can do what it wants to do. I don't really care. So what I'm going to do about that, I'm not going to lift it because I do want the value. I want this part to be darker. I'm just going to, when it dries, I'm just going to go over it with brown again, you know, and darken it up, and it will look cool that there's that color underneath it. That's sort of the freshness that we're kind of going for. I am, however, going to lift some of this red. That was a big pool of red that ran. And I don't want it that dark down there, at least not that dark red. So I need to put this back down so that I do not move it off camera. And this is the main place that you'll notice with better paper, especially in a sketchbook, is I can do this kind of thing. And even with this paper, I have to be a little bit careful not to pill the paper with lifting, but I think that will work much better. I'm just gonna have to let it dry and go over it with a gray again, but that was getting too dark. And I am also going to take, I'm gonna take a flat brush, if I can find it, which maybe I can't. Here it is. I'm gonna get it a little wet. It's just a cheap little angled flat brush. And I'm just gonna lift, I just wanna show my viewer that I noticed this. So I'm gonna lift that middle line. That's the kind of thing when you see a detail like that and you put it into your painting, like your viewer may not realize why that looks so good, but it's because you observed and you took the time and you're adding, it's like adding the little green at the base of your tulip that you showed that most of the time the tulip stem, the green of the stem will bleed into the bud. So anyway, details like that are really, really good for our viewers. And now I'm gonna let you guys.
You've done all wet on dry. You haven't done any wet and wet.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to on these. Well, we could. Let's try it on another one. But no, I generally don't do that much in my sketchbook. Wet on wet. Yeah, the paper doesn't even. This paper can handle it, but it still is not great. It's not as great as watercolor paper. And unless I have paint that really moves around, it kind of doesn't do much because the paper doesn't do very much,
Sure.
So, and usually in my sketchbook, I have more of a drawing, a smaller thing. And so there's not a lot of room to do it, but let's do it. Not that one, because I love that beak so much, but let's do it like on this one and we'll see how that looks. And if you could just give me one moment, we've had some puppy emergencies and I've got to make sure that he's still doing good.
Oh no.
Are you doing good? Yeah. Oh, poor Licorice. I gave him a braided rawhide, and I don't give those to him very often, but I had one and I gave it to him, and I swear by the time I turned around, he'd swallowed it. He chunked off the braids and I was like, oh my gosh, I just changed the laundry and it's gone. And so he's having some tummy upset and then he got dehydrated. And so he's been to the vet twice in 2 days. Poor little monkey. All right. So that guy now, I just got to let him dry before I can do more stuff. So this is a good time to move on to another one. Does anyone have any questions? How's it going out there? This is the part of teaching on Zoom I don't like, which is I can't see what you're doing and ask you questions and torture you. So talk to me. What's going on out there? How are we doing? Do we have questions? Are we frustrated? Go for it. What is it, Mason?
I spent all that time mixing colors, but I got them where I like them now, I think.
Good. Yeah, and if you mix big piles, you can just do all 5 of them. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So now I'm going to do, and actually this water is pretty dirty, so this might work. I'm going to do wet on wet. Let's do this little guy here. Yeah, this is so much water. You can see the water like really pooling. And that's really too much water. you can see how that water is just pooling like that? When you have, if you can look up for a second, if it's a good time, when you have water, when you have that much water, the paint's just going to sit on top of it. It really needs to kind of soak into the paper. So maybe, Mason, it's the soaking part that is different with sketchbook paper than watercolor paper, because it's just kind of sitting there and it's not really going to do anything interesting. So I'll just kind of lift it, and then I have a better wet surface. And then we can go in and kind of drop some paint and just see what happens. So I'm not a huge TV person, but, well, especially now that I found art, I find my art much more interesting than TV. But I do have to ask if anyone has watched the morning show on Apple TV.
Yeah.
We actually signed up when we got sick. We signed up for the free week so that we could watch it. I have to say, partly maybe because I'm an employment lawyer and do sex harassment cases and stuff, it's pretty interesting. It's a very interesting conversation about, you know, consent and the situations we're in and using power. And it's been very interesting. I feel like this robin's head should not be totally brown, but I can't remember. So I'm just gonna go for it. Now I'm kind of liking this little white here. I don't know why, but I'm good. I'm gonna leave the rest of that wing white for now. And then over here, and I'm doing the wing wet on dry, but I did the chest wet on wet. You know, it's so funny to me too, because like I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, whoa, he's a mess. And he is kind of a mess right now, but this is where we remember that art is a process, you know, like it's a buildup of layers of value over time. So another way I can bring value is I can use kind of a dry brush. You know, I can kind of squeeze out my brush. If I have a synthetic brush, I have to squeeze it a lot harder, but with a sable brush, I can just kind of like tap it and squeeze a little bit. And then I can come in and I can, you know, kind of maybe lift out some highlights and soften these edges a little bit. And I may try again doing a little gray on the bottom of this guy with just a touch of this water. Oh my goodness. I just squeezed out my brush on the other page. Good thing I probably wasn't going to paint it. I did I don't know if you guys can see that. I drew my Zoom call. And my husband asked me, who are those people? And I said, I don't know. I can't remember. I should have written it down. Oh, stupid mediation with idiot attorneys or something like that. Yeah, and I'm kind of liking lifting this a little bit. It's just another way to add a little value and tonal difference. But not too much, because I'm already kind of like, that's not looking as fresh as I would like it. So I'll leave that one. You know, one thing I like about sketchbook pages like this, when you do a bunch of little drawings, like even if the painting's not good or the drawing's not that good, the page looks cool because you put effort into all the little pieces. So you can kind of get away. I notice I can get away with a little bit more if my drawing's more complicated. People are more impressed or something. All right, I actually kind of like how that worked. So I'm going to do a little more wet and wet up here. And maybe with this one, I'll drop in some red, and I'll also drop in just a little bit of blue. And then just kind of see what sort of color combination that gives me, if, because it's different if, sometimes it's different if you mix it on mix the color on paper versus let the paints mix. I know an artist who never mixes green in her palette. She always puts blue and yellow on her page and lets them make green together, which is, and her work is really beautiful. I shouldn't say she never does, but that's what she says is she likes her greens to mix on the page. So that one's a little weak. So I think I'm going to add a little bit more red. So here's another opportunity to look up if you wish, but because I have this wet and wet, I have a lot of water, and then I'm adding more watery paint, and I'm not really getting a value that I want. That means I need to come over and I need more paint. I need more pigment in this water, and then I'll get some traction. You can see that red dot kind of stuck around a little better just because it's more highly pigmented to water ratio. But if you're doing wet and wet, or if you've put color down and it's very wet and then you add more color and it's just kind of dispersing, it just means that you to charge in more color. That's what that's called. To charge in more color, you got to have that next mix have more pigment in it. And then don't forget that then we can kind of draw with our paint. You know, on this, I'm just sort of, let's just kind of, you know, drag this around a little bit. I don't really need to get more paint on my brush. I'm just sort of using what I got there. I can even lift some of this. Maybe I want some of this to be a highlight and bring some of that down here. And now I got to hustle because my paints are getting gummy again. Got to spritz them, and then need a quick application of paint so that I can get a little movement of this red into this bird.
Yeah, Mama's back.
Now, one thing that's a drawing thing that's a little weird about what I've got happening here is we have a break in the bird. So I gotta put this tail back up here. Obviously the tail would be connected. So this line dried a little bit, so I'm just going to scrub at it so that I can get a little more softness there. And then try to protect that beak too. And you can see here where I lifted it because it had dried a little bit. So you can kind of see a little brush stroke there, which is fine. But I can also kind of keep, if that bugs me, I can keep working it. But I think with watercolor, it's good not to let little things like that bug you. Just kind of, just let it do what it's doing and then draw over it afterwards. If the line is too diffuse, or because I think it really is the freshness of it is what people love about it, and the transportability. I mean, a lot of artists who do oils or acrylics, they also like to go on location and paint, but they do it with watercolor because it's so portable and so easy. But there's a freshness to it that I think we want to be working with, put it down and leave it. All right, now let's do this whole wing and tail situation, wet on wet. This time I added less water, so hopefully that will work better. And get some paint here. And then soften his head a little. And if like right here, I'm kind of losing my highlight, I didn't clean out my brush, and so I'm kind of spreading this paint around. I can go over that with a little white, if I want to get that back. That's why I have my tools in my arsenal. We probably should have done our wax resist, but I thought I would have better, I thought I could maintain better control of my brushes, but I should have known. Ooh, this is kind of fun. What if I take this little wet paint from this tail and kind of like flick it a little? That feels kind of nice. And it feels like movement or something. I don't know if you can see, I just have a little bit of paint. And it's making the tail look more kind of organic. So I'm liking that. Do it down here too. Oh, maybe I'll take a darker color and do that. Take some of this blue. That I don't like so much. That was a little too much. So now I'm just going to lift some of it out. And always, 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 I'm drawing because I'm lifting out this blue paint that I just put in that I decided I don't like, but I'm lifting it out in the direction of the tail, right? So that those marks that I'm leaving from my lifting are still in service of my drawing. Does that make sense? I think I get away with a lot of mistakes because my brushwork is in the direction of. But I would like a little bit more. So now I have another one of those places where I've added some paint, but it's not really doing anything because it was too wet. So I'm going to mix darker paint, more pigment, a little bit of blue, a little bit of brown, and get my point here, and then try to do that again. There, that's much better. And now you can actually see the value a little better because the paint was thicker. All right, one more little birdiekin. I'm going to do this one wet on dry. And I'm going to move my brush. Oh, see, okay, this is the kind of thing. This is why I'm doing abstracts now. I just love that little brush spot right there. I just think that's magnificent. I don't want to move it or anything. I just want it to be that. I don't know why. I just am loving that shape. So let's just put a little bit more. I'm making my pigment thicker so that it will stick a little better. And I'll just let that be the breast of that one. I'm going to get a watermark because there's a lot of water there. So that will add some more texture also. And maybe I'll just drag it a little bit up to his beak. And then I actually I like doing the wing wet on wet. That was a little more interesting. So let's do that one. This la 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 la. Let's do this one that way. Maybe I'll even touch in a little blue right now. All right, and then we can get some of this brown going up there. All right, if I had photo references, I think these birds would be a little better, but we don't, so we did our best. Put a little bit of dark under here. And I'm trying to be a little soft-handed with it, you know, because he's delicate. Now, right here, it's kind of a moment of truth. There's a lot of water pilled up right there, and I'm doing a little underbelly thingy. But if I touch this red, it's just gonna splatter in there, and I already made that mistake up there. So I'm leaving the tiniest little spot of the page between this gray and this red right here. And so they're not touching. The red's not going into the gray because I saved that. Because I did it up here and I didn't want that to happen again. So that's kind of the magic of watercolor. And I'll just, you know, make it a little looser down here, but also being careful not to touch that. You know, and it depends on how much water you have here, how bad that's going to be. There's quite a little pile of water right there. So that would just totally dump into the belly of the bird. And I don't want that to happen again. Okay, and then I'm going to take a different brush. You can use like a liner brush. I have this brush that I like called a rigger. And it's kind of like a pencil. It's really, it's a liner. And this one is a 2. Yeah, it's a 2. And I'm going to kind of look at their feet because we got to get some feet in here. Now, feet are something, here's the thing about birds. Their feet are prehistoric, okay? I mean, they're dinosaurs, right? So let me tell you something. Don't go in with black when you're doing the feet because you probably won't be super happy with how they look. So I'm going to go kind of light so that I get more than one shot at it, basically. And I'm also not going to make my feet very defined. This one has to be a little bit more because of where they are. And I know enough to know that, you know, they have like a phalange and then a claw but just don't worry too much about the feet. They are really funky. And we don't need a ton of information to know that that's what they are, right? Because really when anything that has an eye, your viewer will look at the eye. That will be the focal point. So between our red beak or our yellow / oranges beak and our eyes, they're not going to be paying too much attention to our feet. This one, I don't even know where he was. Is he in water or something? What's going on there? But oh well. This one's in grass. That makes it easier. And then, you know, I could add a green here, but I think I'm just gonna, gotta spritz again. I'm reminding you of this. I talk about spritzing a lot because I notice that a lot of times beginners, they they don't realize how often they have to do that. They think they can do it once and then just paint, and then they don't understand why they're not getting good washes and why the paints aren't working the way they're supposed to. So I just like to say over and over, don't forget to spritz. It could be that's what the problem is. Anyway, I'm just going to make a green with the colors I already have, because that does add some consistency to my artwork when we don't, you know, change up our colors too much. So I'm also thinking about my page, for those of you kind of thinking about that part of things. And if you're not, don't worry, it's all coming with practice. But I'm thinking about my page, and so I decided to do that grass a little more, just to kind of fill up this, to put something in that white space. I'm just thinking about, it's just shapes in space, right? I have this page and it's kind of jammed up down here. And so I'm kind of probably going to write something over here, but even this grass, I can kind of use that as an opportunity to just make a few brush strokes that fill up some space. All good. I do need more dark. Actually, this is a good, I need more dark under this tail, right? Like obviously under that tail would be way darker. So I'm going to use, and I was just looking at this and thinking, oh, that looks a little dark. So why don't I just use it? Just move the paint around to be where I need it to be. And now I've added a little more value under the bird. I think this one is going to sit on some sort of silvery branch. This one maybe maybe more like wood. That needs to be darker. Now that time I just dipped straight into my paint and then put it on my painting. I hardly ever do that except when I know, like there, that was not dark enough to be a branch and it was already wet. So the paint was naturally going to disperse in a nice soft way. And so I didn't need to worry about, you know, whether it was gummed on here, but sometimes it will actually get kind of gummed on your brush. So that's not a great practice. But as you explore and learn, you see where you can get away with some things. This guy, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's in a pond. What are you doing there, little feller? Oh, I forgot to paint this worm. Oh, that was one of the things I was looking forward to. Okay, now this would be a good time to say, I know what you're thinking, worms are pink, but I'm just telling you, if you paint some bright pink worm out of that guy's mouth, it's gonna look weird. So instead, I don't want a red worm either. I don't want a burnt orange. And you know, the other things is worms are not one color, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys, if you garden, you know, but like worms are all sorts of colors. They're so we gotta keep that in mind too. All right, I'm gonna grab some more kombucha, and I just want to let you know that we have time, but it is 6:30. Hi, sweet people. Oh my goodness. All right, keep each other company. I'm gonna take this pooch outside. Does anyone have anything dry enough to share with us? Or anything they don't mind dripping? Okay, so at this stage, I've done kind of my loose first thing. And I see, we need some definition and we need some shadows. But I find that my artwork makes a lot more sense to me if I put in the eyes next, because when you have such an important piece of the puzzle not done, then you sometimes can start fiddling with other things when really, if you just put the eyes in, it progresses a lot, right? And then it's more clear what else needs to happen. And one trick that I actually learned from a student a couple years ago, Laura, is I was trying to mix this really dark paint and then trying to use a brush to put the eye in. and she just used a pen. And I just thought, oh, that just makes so much more sense. So I am now looking for a black pen. I mean, this is exactly where I want a ton of control, right? And I can even kind of keep my highlight, or I mean, if I mess up the highlight, I can do it later. But as long as it's still white, you know, I can kind of keep my highlight and just put my eye in, and already, you know, that guy makes a lot more sense, just having that spot there. This one, I may have already messed up the highlight, but let's see. Yeah, I think that one I'll need to put the highlight back in a little bit. Kind of remember you could see part of his eye on the other side from the picture that I took, or not, I don't know where I got these. And then this guy, he might be looking up. So let's put his highlight on the top. And then let's see this guy, he's probably looking forward. Oh. Don't forget, you can turn your page. I did keep his highlight. And then this one. Proud little worm. All right. And so to me, like, this page already makes so much more sense after putting the eyes in, you know, can you see that too?
Yeah.
And so now I feel like, okay, yeah, it definitely needs some more shadows and stuff, but that's really good information as far as the pop factor. The other thing that I'm noticing is this guy's mouth would be darker. And again, I wish I had a photo reference, but I don't know. I think it might be kind of, let's say, brownish back there. It'd be pretty dark, but still warm. I mean, it's a throat, it's a tongue. So I'm just gonna make this a little darker. Now, I'm kind of not so into that shape that I just made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to squeeze it out. And I'm doing this with a little synthetic brush because I just feel like this should be a little different value. But actually, I'm thinking back here should be pretty dark. So I'm going to get some blue, and now I'm going to just drop that right in the corner here so I can darken that side. And if I don't want the blue to run, I can tip my page to keep it on that side of the bird's beak. I'm just thinking that there would be more light shown on this side, and that would be where it would be darkest. I don't know if you can see that, but that's my intention there. And then I also would like to better, this would be more triangular. So let's kind of fix that shape too. Yeah, that looks much better. You know, that's the kind of thing where when we're at the focal point like that, it's good to tighten up, get it right where we want it. Yeah, that's a good time for that. And I'm even gonna lift this out a little bit. The blue is traveling a little more than I wanted it to. Now I'm kind of lifting the paint a little bit, but that's okay because I want some variety in tone. So this is called glazing when I'm painting over dry paint. And so I glaze with a synthetic brush because I want to control the water a little better. So at this stage, you know, my color selection doesn't matter so much as long as I keep consistent with my colors. But obviously, you know, under this beak, it would be darker. And then I can just kind of soften that a little. I also want a little more contrast in the beak and the eye. So maybe I'll come around like that. You know, this part of it, I'm just drawing, you know, I'm just drawing with paint and achieving the values that I want with paint. I know that under his wing will be darker. So let me, you know, go ahead and get some, and so for this stage, I'm making my paint a little thicker, more like milk, cream, maybe. And I don't want to just do a stripe under there. Okay, that's going to look really weird. But right here where things ran, I can actually just kind of come over that and use that as a way to accentuate some of this shadow. And you see, I kind of did with dots and dashes. So it's not just a straight flat line that would look really strange. And then I soften, you know, I get the water out of my brush and then I can soften some of those edges. I feel like some of this needs to be a little darker. And so I'm just gonna add a little more contrast there and kind of do the same thing. So let me tell you something about glazing that I just did. If your brush is not clean, if your brush is not clean, you're just gonna move paint around. What am I trying to say? If when you're glazing, rather than softening the edge, you find that the paint is moving, it might be because your brush isn't clean. You want to like really get the paint out of there and, you know, tap it off so that it still has some moisture in it. And then, okay, so over here, I need a little darker under here. So what I'm going to do over here is different. I'm actually going to take the red again. And this is where I'm adding value. I know that there would be a shadow under that wing, but I'm also adding contrast. And so I'm choosing to use the red of the chest, and I'll do it on that side. But it's the same idea. I'm still adding value. I'm just doing it, you know, instead of under the wing over here, I'm doing it across the chest. And then I'm tapping my brush out, kind of cleaning it off. And then I can soften this again. I'm going to soften it in, you know, as if I am making little feathers. And I could even actually come in with a little more red paint. Let me try this over here first. But, you know, we know that these birds have little feathers on them. So what if I take my brush super light and I just kind of, you know, let it dance a little bit. I have to be a little careful, but let me just try it again in the direction of the chest, keeping in mind this midline. Let me just see, you know, if I can make some texture. This is something that would work better on watercolor paper because it has texture. But that kind of worked. It's a little like a chest, like a suit of arms or something. So now I'm just going to come in with my bigger brush, and now I can just kind of soften some of that. So then I'm still getting the effect without it looking so much like I don't know, he's wearing a, I shouldn't even make a joke about that, but a bulletproof vest or something. Yeah, I like that. I think that looks more, just a little bit more like the ruffles and stuff that you see of them. Now, I'll also say my line down the middle here is looking a little funny to me. I'm going to try a different brush. Get this rigger again. Because actually, I don't think the line really does that well. I think it is a little more random. So I'm just going to again come in and kind of like make some marks there to break that up a little bit. I think that looks a little more natural. Now I've let my red get pretty red, which not much I can do about that right now, but just noting for the record. And then this one, now that he's drier, I can come in with the gray again. But I want it to be really light because he is supposedly white. And maybe I'll even try the rigger and just try to kind of get some, I don't know, interesting marks or something happening down here. Because he would actually be pretty dark under here, you know.
The shadow, you mean, because of that?
Yeah. It's just like our orange.
Right.
This part's going to be a lot darker. At least in relation to maybe more of the white under his breast. And now I feel like I'm ready to darken the legs, especially because these legs I can't even see. And then need to darken under the tail again.
Oh.
What's happening out there, Pamela?
Mine doesn't have a tail.
I know.
I just realized.
I know. It's, you know, it's kind of funny. I left some drawing mistakes on purpose because I was like, let's see if anybody know or how long it takes them to notice that this one doesn't have a tail. I was like this one doesn't really have a tail either. I was like, oh, no wonder that bird looks like a penguin. He doesn't have a tail.
Well, but the thing is that it might be up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't look that weird.
I think that really this drawing looks so weird just because of his beak that I'm not sure that the tail is my big distraction. I mean, his beak looks more like a hawk beak. It's not a robin beak. So,
You know,
so we already.
I'm looking at a bunch of robins, and there's all these different ones, and some of them have big tails. Some of them hardly have any little teeny.
Yeah.
Tails. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. It's very different. It's very different. Yeah. And I do encourage you, if you want to do like a page of chickadees or a page of tuies or, you know, because you guys can look at those references. And like I said, I don't want to put them on a paid class because of the copyright issues. But, you know, look at those and use them. I'm sure I probably got these pictures from somewhere. These actually might be from my pictures because I do take a lot of pictures of birds in the yard. But yeah, look at different ones. And the thing about this guy, and you're right, his tail might be up, but I think you'd see it back here if it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also kind of, it's weird, like our eye kind of knows if his posture isn't angry, then his tail wouldn't be up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, one thing that we need on these birds that I hadn't done is even if there's a highlight, we do need his ear,
Goodness.
which is there. It's like a little cheek.
Hmm.
And another thing I just did that I'll let you know, if you're painting, if you're glazing and you're painting over paint and it starts to lift on the bottom, usually that means the paint underneath wasn't dry enough. Sometimes it means that there's just a lot of paint down there. And so it's almost like you have a swatch and you've reactivated it. But usually it's because the paint wasn't totally dry. And so it's lifting. I just kind of did that here a little bit, which reminded me of that. But again, you know, all these things, you know, just keep painting and it just becomes like second nature. It's so weird. You're totally like simpatico with what's happening. And obviously I'm going to darken the underside of this branch. And actually, unless it's a steel pole, I shouldn't have it be a stripe, because a real branch, you know, it wouldn't be just a line across. Keep that in mind as you're doing like organic things. It's kind of the dot and dash approach, because that's how organic things are. That's why they're very forgiving subjects, and cars are not. Who was it that was drawing cars? Pamela, was that you?
Oh, I started to draw it. I haven't gotten.
Oh,
I mean, I'm
Anne.
drawing it, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. Gotcha. I was going to say, so if you take a picture of your drawings when they're not working, sometimes when you see it small, you can see really clearly what's wrong. Or this is a weird one. Believe it or not, you can ask your spouse, because even though your spouse may not draw, the eye, when we're not so like we can't see it anymore because we're working so hard to get it right, but your spouse isn't. And so they'll just be like, oh, well, it's because the roof looks like it's like flying up in the corner, you know? And then it's like, oh, I need it to be flatter. I get it. Yeah.
It was the proportions that were so hard.
Yes. Well, that's all about the setup, you know? Like that's why we do the setup and we do it super loose, and we use circles because they're circles and ellipses because they're easier to draw. And if I don't have this and this right, then I don't move on.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't move on to the next step until like, yeah, that's about how long and that's about how high. But you reminded me, I did want to share something with you that we haven't talked about yet in class, which is measuring. And artists do a lot of measuring, and you can use a ruler, especially when you have like a printed photograph. You can just use a ruler. How high is it compared to the length? And that will help, you know, when you're doing your setup, you'll know, oh, it's half as high as it is long. But you can also measure, like you can hold lock your, when you're doing it from afar, well, you're not doing it from afar, so I won't get into that right now, but you can just use your pen, you know, like, okay, that's how tall it is. And it's 1, 2, 2.5 of those long. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you have a much better chance of getting it right.
I'm
So
wondering
I'm
if
kind oh, go ahead.
sharing pretty soon because we've got 8 minutes.
Yes, we should. Good idea. Thank you, Martha. You're always so good about remembering that. All right, who's ready to lift it up and show us something? No, Teresa's blowing. She's not ready.
I can try. We'll see what happens.
All right.
Oh,
Ooh,
nice.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
those are
Great,
lovely.
Great color.
Really great.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, your orange is way better. How did you mix it?
Let's see. I did burnt sienna, pyrrole
Ah.
scarlet, and new gamboge.
Oh, that's way better than mine. That looks so good.
Oh yeah, and I got accidentally just a little drop of a blue of ultramarine in some of it, but that was an accident.
Oh.
It just not it didn't really affect it, but
No, and I think it looks good.
Yeah,
it might
yeah.
have even helped with the one that's a little more defined on the bottom. It might have even helped.
oh
even to
oh you
define
know what? That one I did different. I did raw sienna and burnt sienna. I did raw sienna more on the top and burnt sienna at the bottom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hang on, let me remove spotlight. Okay, now you'll either be on speaker view or gallery view. If you want to see everybody, put yourself on gallery. If you want to see who's sharing, put yourself on speaker. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Anne, would you like to share what you have? All right, here we go. Oh, God, that looks great.
Nice.
Oh,
Oh, that looks so good.
This
Oh, that
really
looks-
cracked me up. I think this one looks like a character, like a person in a costume.
It totally does. I was thinking that too. I was like, that guy looks like he's in a suit.
He has personality, that's for sure.
He totally has personality.
Yeah,
Those are just
it does.
lovely. Really nice job with the drawings too. Really nice. Yeah. Yeah. Nicely done. Those
Okay, I
are
think I can
great.
go.
All right. Oh
Okay.
my goodness.
Oh
Great.
yeah.
And this little guy,
Those
he looked so deformed until he had eyes, and then his tail's
Yeah,
he has kind of
totally.
a beaver tail, but
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Oh, those look great. Those look great. Good job. Really good job.
thank you.
Are you pleased with them?
Somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. Right on. Hey, what more can we ask for at
That's
this
right.
stage,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I feel the same. So, that's we're all in the same boat. Martha, how about you? Can you share?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, good job. Oh, such
Neat.
vibrant colors. Such
Yeah.
vibrant colors. And nice job saving some whites too. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's hard to remember that. It has taken me years. I used to have a little note on my desk that said leave whites. And it didn't work. I still couldn't do it. It's the hardest. It's the thing is when you're learning something, you just got a lot going on. That's why I talk about like just use one color, just because we have so much, especially when we're learning something new. I mean, that's what's kind of great about once you kind of master the technique part, then you can have a little more fun because you're not thinking so hard about, oh, what's going to happen now and what's the water doing now and why is the paint doing that and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's just, yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. There's so much to learn. Art is a never-ending journey, which, by the way, is good for our brains. So keep it up. Keep it up. Pamela, I think I did not see you yet. Is
Well-
it too wet?
No, it's not at all wet, but I'm just gonna put my finger over this one. I didn't do the whole drawing, so I just kind of did
Yeah.
a last minute, but I put 3 because this one was in the totally wrong spot.
Oh my
tried
God, I
erasing
love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
And
might
as
just need-
usual, I don't have as much definition as I need. So
Yeah, we need a little more dark, but
Yeah.
but I love that this is a weird thing to say, but I feel like I can feel the dinosaur in your birds. Way to go.
It definitely looks like feathers too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that technique. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and it's just a base. What I was going to show you, and I am going to show you just really quick, is then what I like to do is, and again, for this I really should have a photo reference, but I have a whole book on drawing birds, so I'll look at my book later. But basically, this is where I'm going to come in with my pen, and I'm going to which one can I figure out without a photo reference? Okay, so I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to like do some of these kind of and not, can you see those lines?
Yeah.
Not a ton, just a suggestion. I mean, and that's where the beauty of the loose watercolor really works, because then you put line over it and you're using line to help you achieve what the darks and the definition that we didn't achieve with our paint. And then we can really make things pop. And the fact that it's dark underneath, it just doesn't matter. Or I'm sorry, the fact that it's things aren't right, or we have blotchy paint application, it doesn't matter. It just looks soft and loose because we've given this information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely look at a photo reference. Better yet, look at a drawing of a bird. Like I would, let me share my screen with you for a second.
Would you put ink on the beaks?
Yes, I would. Not where the highlight is, but I would put it like where the line is. So let's look up images robin bird drawing. Okay, like something like this is perfect. Are you screen sharing with me at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So like this one, it's just showing you exactly like the direction of those lines. You know, again, the artist has simplified it for us and made more sense, but we can see where I think these are the secondary or primary. These are the primary, these are the secondary, but it's just giving us a little bit more information to give to our viewers. So I will look at something like this, and then I'll go in and you know, just do a tiny bit of line work. We don't want it to look heavy, and you know, the more information we give, the more we have to give. But just try use a juicy pen and look at it, and or if you have proper watercolor paper, you can actually do this with paint, just really thick paint. But and something like a rigger, like a little pencil or a liner. That's how I would do it with paint, is I would mix up like 3 different really dark paints, and then I would just make these lines. But you know, for purposes of a sketchbook, a pen is just a little easier, but use those lines and see how few you can use. But if I put lines here and give that wing some definition, I'm going to get some nice contrast. And that's the other thing, you want to do it where you need contrast. So it works better where it's lighter, because then you're going to see the ink really well. And so it'll take less. If I do it in black spots, it's just going to get lost. But if I do it in lighter spots, I can use my lines really efficiently. And then I can see, you know, how much do I need? So don't do this. Don't like, you know what I'm saying? Where you like get like this far away from it and you're like totally fixated on this 1 inch space. Don't do it like that. Get up, stand up, look at the whole page, you know, like literally put yourself away from it and see how much do I need? Okay, I need a line right here. In fact, I'm going to put it into the white so that you can really see it. You know, and now I've just, where that was once soft, now I've made it hard, but I've made it hard where it counts. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I look forward to seeing, and Mason, on your paper, just mix up like 3 super dark colors, you know, like, and then use a little brush. You would really enjoy one of these riggers. So next time it's payday and it's time to buy art supplies.
I have a little 2 round that works real well for detail. It's real small.
Yeah, yeah. If you can control it well, that's good. What I find about rounds is I end up pushing down on them and I release too much paint. So I mess up my line.
Hmm.
So like here's a small round, but I have a hard time keeping the line, and then I push down and it gets wide. Whereas with this one, I can't do that
Gotcha.
because it's so fine. But it's also kind of like a dip pen that it will give you different kinds of lines.
Okay.
So you can add variety to your line with this. Anyway, it's just something to work with what you have just for your, for next time your birthday comes around kind of thing,
Mhm.
This has turned into one of my favorite brushes for adding texture and this kind of thing, so
Okay.
if I was doing this on a proper piece of watercolor paper, then I wouldn't do it with ink. I would do this. But for our purposes in the sketchbook, the ink is just very efficient.
Mhm.
And that's when we really forget the photo reference, other than we need to know where these lines are. We're just really communing with our piece of art. So we've taken it all the way from I'm observing birds, I'm learning about birds, I'm studying birds. Where is this line? Where are these things? How are they built? I'm taking that all the way through the drawing and the painting, and then I'm just communing with my page. It's just it's a magical process, and it really doesn't matter it really doesn't matter what's happening on the page. It just really doesn't. Yeah.
So I wanted to say something.
Mhm.
I just was at in Everett at the Shack Center. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
No.
there's this exhibit with these two amazing artists. One's a painter and one's a carver painter, and they're best friends, and they paint or he paints the Danish man paints him and his family and stuff. And it's SCHACK in Everett. Go. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I love art exhibits. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
It's really
Do you know how long it will be there?
only till I think June 4th or something like that.
Okay.
So,
All right. All right. All right. Thank you. I'm going to get that on my calendar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pamela.
Uh-huh. Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, you guys. Well, those are our birds. We're not quite done, but we'll have some fun with them, and we'll look at some photo references. And then next Thursday, we'll look at what we've done.
Great.
It's all right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Cameron.
You.
Night.
Have a good weekend.
Good
Oh,
night.
enjoy the sunshine. Get outside and sketch if you
Yeah.
can. Just give it a try.
I hope Rick is feeling
Finally.
better.
Thank you. He will. Thank you so much, Mason.
Mhm.
Good night, you guys.
Good night.
Bye.